Just finishing up a drawing. You know, I was thinking about my childhood the other day. You got a moment? I was an odd kind of kid when I was growing up. My folks had just bought their first house. It was in a brand new subdivision, and our house was at the very back. And behind my house was acres of undiscovered, or well, not undiscovered, but unexplored woods. My mother actually got kind of worried about me because often she'd see me standing in the backyard staring out into those woods as if I was listening to some kind of siren's call that only I could hear. Those woods were a magical place to me, full of wondrous things. They still are. When I got a little bit older and I went away to high school, I decided that I wanted to join the basketball team. It seemed basketball players were very popular with the girls, and that seemed to be something worth pursuing. Now, they had a thing called tryouts, and you have to understand most of the guys that went out for tryouts had been playing basketball since they were in grade school. They probably ate breakfast with a basketball under their arm. They probably ate lunch and dinner and even slept with a basketball under their arm. I, on the other hand, picked up a basketball only probably a few weeks before the tryouts. Now, during the tryouts, they had a thing called patterns where two players would dribble the ball, passing it back and forth as they went down towards the basket. They'd be weaving in and out and dodging one another. And then one player would lay the ball up into the net. When it's done correctly, it's actually quite beautiful to watch, almost like a ballet. When it came my turn, it wasn't quite so beautiful. I messed that practice up so bad that the coach actually canceled and rescheduled. I think he was hoping that I would find something else to interrupt my time, which I did because I really wasn't interested in wearing those big baggy satin shorts and rubber shoes that squeak every time you stopped on a wooden floor. I thought maybe I'll become an actor. After all, our high school had a really good drama department, and we had a student named Deborah Miller. Never Debbie, always Deborah. Deborah was the closest thing we had to a diva. She developed faster than the other girls in the high school, and by the time she was 16 years old, she had the singing voice of an adult, really quite beautiful. Well, the drama department was getting ready to do the production of Breakfast at Tiffany's, and if you remember the movie, the key song is Moon River, and Deborah was going to sing that. She'd been practicing it for months. When it came time for opening night, my job was to operate the curtain. I was stage right. Now, there was 2 ropes that controlled the curtain, but there was a bunch of other ropes back there too. And when the lights went out, in my defense, you can't tell which rope from the other rope. So somewhere between the line Moon River and Whiter Than a Stream, I thought I heard my cue to open the back curtain, which would have exposed the rest of the choir, and they would have joined Deidre, and it would have been a beautiful song. Unfortunately, I closed the front curtain on Deborah's singing career. I could still see her eyes burning holes through me. The really unfortunate thing is that the basketball coach was also the drama coach. So I pretty much ended my athletic career and my acting career in one night. Too bad, too. I think I had a lot more to offer. My folks wanted me to go to college because nobody in our family had ever gone to college, and there was a university right there in the town, so it made sense. After 10 grueling minutes of conversation with my guidance counselor, it was determined that I was suited for a career as a biologist, probably because I spent all that time in the woods. My curriculum was picked out, and I selected a biology class. Unfortunately, it was a biology class with pre-med majors. These kids were diagramming body parts that I hadn't even heard of. One day, the instructor called me up to his desk, and he says, "Mr. Fenton, what's your major?" Very proudly, I said, "Biology, sir." In kind of a humble voice, he said, "Mr. Fenton, Don't tell anyone you're a biology major. Well, I decided right then that college probably wasn't right for me at this time. I wanted adventure. I wanted to travel the world. And I wanted somebody else to pay for it because I didn't have any money. Well, if you're an 18-year-old in 1960s and you want to see the world and you don't have any money, there's only one organization that'll pay for that, Uncle Sam. So I started looking at the different branches of the service. Air Force, well, unless you're a pilot, they really don't want you flying their airplanes. How about the Army? You know, I was such an awkward kid that I thought in case of war, I was sure to be one of the first ones to get shot, or I'd end up shooting myself in the foot. What about the Navy? The Navy, I thought. I could envision myself on the bridge of some great battleship, the salt water blowing in my face as we entered into some great sea battle. The military, in all its great wisdom, decided that I was perfectly suited to protect the country's secrets. The Navy decided that I should be in the intelligence department. I could envision them issuing me a 007 card and my own Walther PPK with that little suede shoulder holster that James Bond used to wear. Instead, they issued me a pair of earphones and a typewriter. We'd spend days sitting in a classroom listening to Morse code. A signal would come across the earphones, da-da, and everybody would shout out alpha. And it went on like that for the rest of the alphabet for weeks. Grown men were starting to wet the bed at night. Sometimes they'd sit up in the middle of the night, still asleep, and shout out, da-da, alpha. I, on the other hand, slept like a baby. Well, after 4 years of boating with the Navy, I finally came to the conclusion that my real passion was art. I'd spent a lot of time on my time off in the Navy painting and drawing. I had a friend in the Navy who was from Kansas, and his goal was he wanted to work for Hallmark Cards, and he and I spent a lot of time traveling around the island of Guam painting. So when I got out of the service, I went back to college and signed up as an art major. I used to get these letters from these academic societies telling me that my grades were high enough that they wanted me to join their society. Now, to be quite honest, it's not that hard to get good grades as an art major. If you showed up with materials they recommended, you could get a D. If you showed up with materials and long hair, that was good for a C. If you showed up with materials, long hair, and appeared to be suffering for your art, that would be a B. We only had one person that got an A, and they disappeared. We never heard from them again. My best friend in college was a guy named Jim. Jim was an electrical engineering student. And it used to drive him crazy that I'd get these letters from these academic societies, because you can imagine how hard it is to get an A as an electrical engineer. Another thing used to drive Jim crazy. I never did like putting titles on my pieces. I still don't. And Jim saw an etching that I had done, and he liked it so much, I just decided to give it to him. Well, there was something wrong. It didn't have a title. I think in Jim's mind, without a title, it just didn't exist yet. So I sat down and I scribbled something on it. Now, all of a sudden, it was a piece of artwork. It had a title. You know, I've worked as a graphic designer. I have been an art director. I have worked for newspapers. I have been a freelancer for a while, and I have done my share of murals, that type of thing. It's been an interesting life choice. Art in itself is an odd kind of career. But you know, it turns out it's a perfect kind of career for an odd kind of kid. Talk to you later.